If you're smart, you should not have any smart devices in your home. Yes, I said it. But since we want the cool tech and the cool convenience of smart devices, I'm going to show you what you must do to set them up so that you are not vulnerable and know that super secure password that you set up is not going to protect you. And this is why I partnered with ASUS, but more on that shortly. You see, these smart devices, smart gadgets work pretty much the same. You plug them in, you download an app, you create an account, and now you can control them from anywhere in the world as long as you've got internet access. Well, let's look at what we have just done. These smart gadgets are known as IoT devices, or Internet of Things, and that's exactly what they are. Things that connect to the internet. Would you even think of connecting your computer to the internet without security apps like an antivirus? Probably not. And yet, we happily buy a $2 smart plug on Amazon and stick it into our home network and give it access to our Wi-Fi and the internet. I mean, huh? And since many of these smart home devices are designed with affordability in mind, to keep costs down, these devices typically run on components made by the cheapest makers that are out there. And because they don't require much in terms of like processing power just to switch on the light, they don't have any anti-malware software. They don't encrypt your data, and beyond like that username and passwords, they certainly don't have any firewall or complicated protection. And even those passwords are a complete joke, as many of these devices have been proven to have built-in backdoors that are hard-coded. That means we can't change the passwords even if we wanted to. So great, so now what we have done is we've connected these devices to our Wi-Fi network with very little protection, which means we've just punched a hole in whatever security our Wi-Fi router was offering. Not a great move. Okay, but that was the bad news. Here comes the good news. There is finally a standard that is being put in place to verify that smart gadgets are indeed secure. Now, this is the Connectivity Standard Alliance Product Security Working Group launching the IoT Device Security Standard 1.0. So any device that is going to get their verification stamp of approval, it's got to show that they have good security practices. Notice how it says no hard-coded default password? Yes, that is what we're dealing with today. So new devices coming out in the future that meet this standard are going to pass all these tests so that we know and we have the confidence that once we install these on our network, they have our security back. So only reputable companies will apply for this, will get it, and it's about friggin' time. All right, but since this is all brand new, the big question is, what do we do if we want smart devices now? And what do we do with the devices we already own? All right, well, firstly, if you're going to buy a new smart devices, please buy from a well-known company. Yes, it's going to cost you a little bit more, but let's be honest, those large companies with a reputation to protect have a budget for ongoing security checks and are constantly releasing updates to their devices as they discover new vulnerabilities. Do we really think that a company selling a $2 plug has any interest in investing in our security? Man, let's be honest, that $2 plug is using a third-party app which they don't even own, and you of course legally bound to agree to those terms and services, which in most cases say that, hey, they are protected. And by the way, those same terms and services you agreed to give them information such as your location, your device's name, and a whole bunch more. So ask yourself, is it worth spending a little bit more now to get the convenience of a smart device managed by a decent company? Probably yes. Okay, so that's for brand new devices. What about all the devices that we have right now? Well, for that, a very simple thing that you can do right now is put all your smart devices on a completely separate network. And no, that does not mean going to get yourself a second Wi-Fi router and a second internet connection. It means that if you look at your router settings, you can enable something called the guest network. And what a guest network does is create a completely separate Wi-Fi network with its own Wi-Fi name that doesn't even know about your main Wi-Fi where you're connecting all your computers, your backup devices, your printers, and everything else. So if somebody does manage to get into your smart devices, they're not able to run a command like nmap to map out your entire network. Aha, and this is why I'm a massive fan of the ASUS ROG Rapture GT BE98 Pro, who has a serious focus on security and is the perfect solution for creating guest networks. And yes, networks in plural. I'm going to show you what that means. You see, with the GT BE98 Pro and several other routers within the ASUS range, you get AI protection built in. This is powered by Trend Micro to continuously protect your network with updates to fight against those latest malware and vulnerabilities. And now, added to that, you get the Guest Network Pro, which is beyond just protecting your smart devices. Okay, let's dive into the Guest Network Pro. So the first option we have is a captive portal. So, you know, when you go to a coffee shop, you're able to log in to their network to use the internet. You can do exactly that, no additional cost. It's all baked in right here into the Guest Network Pro. And you can, of course, choose which kind of devices you're allowed to connect, 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz, 6 gigahertz, and you can put some Wi-Fi scheduling. So it doesn't have to be open the entire time, and access to the internet, in other words, your local network, the answer is no. Right, next up is your normal guest network that you would give your friends and family when they come over. So you can have an open system or one that's protected with the password. But check this out. You can actually limit the amount of time so you can customize it as you see fit. And again, the bandwidth, you can control that. And it's got something called a bandwidth limiter. We all have that one person that decides to back up their entire device on our own network. We could limit that so nobody sucks up our entire bandwidth. Another cool option is setting up a complete different kids network, which actually has Wi-Fi scheduling built in. You can limit how often and how long they're allowed to spend online. You can limit it by time, days of the week, and you can even put this cute little message like, "Did you do your homework? Are you sure?" before they're actually able to connect to the network. Right, next up is the IoT network. This is the one that we specifically want to set up for our smart devices. Give it a complete unique SSID, a network name, give it a password, and then we can say do not use the same subnet as our main network. In other words, keep it completely separate. And since most smart devices only use the 2.4 gigahertz bandwidth, well, great, we're going to limit it just to that. And Wi-Fi scheduling, super important. So think about it. Your smart garage opener or your smart doorbell, does that need to be connected to the internet 24 hours a day? Probably not. So you can now limit it and then limit your exposure. Right, speaking of exposure, the VPN Wi-Fi network, yes please. Anything connected through to this VPN SSID is automatically going to be encrypted with a VPN. And if you didn't like any of those options, you are free to go and create your own customized Wi-Fi network. This is so good that ASUS is actually rolling out the Guest Network Pro feature to other routers with a simple firmware update. I have a full list in the description below. So as you're moving all your smart devices to your guest network, you may be thinking, hold on, I need more power, I need more flexibility, I need a better router. And is the ASUS gaming router actually something that us normal people can do who don't game? Well, I've got a whole video about that right over here. Give the video a quick like before you head out. I'll see you in this video. Let's go.